Morning, Botai, Erev Shabbat Shalom. Just for a moment, I'd like to revisit the halachot of crockpots on short Fridays, because a lot of people were confused by last week's halacha, so I want to clarify it, Bezat Hashem, crystal clear. Now, as follows. In terms of Isur Shihiyah, which is leaving any food on an uncovered flame, on an open flame, that's called the Isur of Shihiyah. The Chachamim were concerned that even if you left it, you're not doing anything on Shabbat. The Chachamim were concerned that when you leave something on an open heat source, you're going to come to stoke the coals and raise the fire on Shabbat. Now, over here, a crock pot, according to many poskim, is something that's considered an open flame, even though you can't see the flame, but this is something that is usually used as a normal cooking method during the week for many, many people, and therefore, you cannot just leave food as is on it on Erev Shabbat. Now listen carefully. Just like with any shehiyah, there are two ways to allow leaving food partially cooked as Shabbat begins. One way is betikuna ma'achal. One way is by doing something to fix the food, which we'll speak about in a minute. And another way is by doing tikuna ish, by fixing the fire. Altogether, you have four options to make it permissible to leave a chalent in a crock pot on Friday as Shabbat begins. Listen carefully. Tikuna ish. Number one way, easiest way, is to make sure that the chalent is either fully or at least half cooked as Shabbat begins. In which case, according to the minhag, it is acceptable to leave it that way. We're no longer concerned about stoking because it's cooked enough when Shabbat begins. Obviously, if it's not fully cooked, you have to be very careful. If the chalent is not fully cooked before Shabbat begins, by the time Shabbat begins, and now on Friday night, it's not fully cooked yet. You took off the top to check on it. It's not there yet. You're not allowed to put the top back on. It's asur. It's bishul. It's kiruv bishul. You can't do that. You have to be very careful. Over here, we're not talking about checking it. We're talking about just leaving. So just leaving, if it's fully or at least half cooked, you can leave it as is as Shabbat begins. That's method number one. Method number two is, let's say it's between 0 and 50% cooked by the time Shabbat begins, sunset of Friday evening. What you can do is, the Chachamim say, take a raw piece of meat or a raw piece of chicken and throw it in. Why? The Chachamim said, if you do that, it's not going to get cooked on Friday night. That's like you are being mesiach da'at. You're pushing it out of your mind. That allows it to stay on an open flame as well. That's method number two. Method number three is, if it's not partially cooked at all, right before, if one little piece of meat, raw meat, makes the whole thing asur right before Shabbat, certainly what works before Shabbat, again, you have to experiment to see if it's going to be to your liking, but let's say you're okay with this, a few minutes before Shki'ah, right before Shki'ah, on Friday afternoon, boom, plug it in right then. Completely raw. You plug it in right before Shki'ah, also mutar, because once again, it's not going to be ready tonight, and it's as if you're pushing it out of your mind. Three methods in terms of tikuna ma'achal. Fully or half cooked, raw piece of meat right before Shki'ah, plugging it in completely raw right before Shki'ah. Then there's something that's called tikuna ish, which means, now let's say I have a problem. Let's say it's 25% cooked before Shabbat or 20% cooked before Shabbat. That's exactly the range that the Chachamim said it's asur to leave it, anywhere between 0 and 50% cooked. Now, I don't want to throw in a raw piece of meat. I don't know what's going to do to my chalent. I don't want to do that. There's something else that you can do, just like by the fire, by the gas, you can make a blech. You can make a blech inside the crock pot as well. You can make a hekir. You can minimize the heat and make some sort of recognition so that you don't come to stoke to make the temperature higher on Shabbat. What can you do? Either you can have like a real blech, you can have a custom-made aluminum round piece to put inside the base of the crock pot before Shabbat, or if you don't have that, you can use several sheets of aluminum foil. You put on the inside of the base several sheets of aluminum foil. That's weird. That's a hekir. That's something out of the ordinary. Once you do that, you put several sheets of aluminum foil inside the base of the crock pot. Plus, you take another piece of aluminum foil and you cover the knob on the outside of the base, that serves as a blech. That's called garufe katum. You've now covered the fire. Once you covered the fire, once you covered the heat source, we're no longer concerned about the level of cooking because the Chachamim said, oh, the guy's going to pull back. He's going to say, oh, there's something off here, and he's not going to come to make the temperature higher. 4 different solutions about how to permissibly leave your cholent in a crock pot on the, if it's not fully cooked yet, before Shabbat on short winter Fridays. Shabbat Shalom V'urach.